Hey everybody, welcome back to Killing the Cabal. Today we're going to jump in with a video about the Brothers Grimm. I've been wanting to do this for a while. I started researching this a couple of years ago, and what drew me to wanting to research the Brothers Grimm is the tales that they were able to collect. If I had a complete works of the Brothers Grimm growing up, and I remember when my grandparents gave that to me and I started reading it because the tales were so different than all of the Disney movies that I had watched, and it was a little disturbing, not traumatic because I was older. By then I was, probably, 11, 10, maybe 10 or 11. So it wasn't necessarily disturbing. It was just very strange to me. And I didn't understand the violence that was in it. Of course, as I got older, thinking back on those stories that I read, like, the tale about Cinderella, Hansel and Gretel, Rumpelstiltskin, Snow White, all of those tales, all these tales were actually not created for children. These, they were collected, rather, not created, but collected, and gathered for adult readers. So, that, first of all, should tell you something. If you can actually read some of these stories for free online, and you can download the complete works, on your computer or on your Kindle. Some of the books that you buy, some of the collections that you can buy actually come with illustrations. That's what I had growing up, the illustrated book. But the point that I'm trying to make is, why would Walt Disney take these tales, these German tales that were gathered for an adult reader, and take out, the majority of the violence, I would say, and the majority of the really disturbing themes, and create these now beloved and remade, movies and stories. What I discovered in my research is that there were people that were funding the collection of these tales. I don't know every single person that was involved. I know of one. I was able to find one person that had funded, gathering up some of these stories, and it was just one of the friends of the Grimm brothers. And the information that I found out about him, I really wasn't able to find out much other than just, some family history and his work history, but nothing really interesting. But what I did find out is that there is a connection between the Rothschilds and the Grimm brothers. So let's dive right into where Wilhelm and Jacob are from. Okay, so in this picture you can see this was taken in 1847. They were both born in Jacob was born in 1785, Wilhelm was born in 1786. They were born in a small town in Frankfurt, or I guess maybe near Frankfurt, you would say. And that was actually very close to where the Rothschild family, the German division, was based. That's where one of their main homes was. Now let's go out here just a moment so I can show you this. Okay, so here are the brothers. That's just a drawing. The brothers were not just a collector of those stories, they were actually professors and librarians, head librarians of a school in Germany, which I'll get to soon. And they had several other careers. So if you want to do a little bit of research on them yourself, there are lots of different places that you can go to find some information. The name of the town that they were born in, I can't say this properly, but Hanau, Hanau. And that was very, very close to where the German Rothschild family lived as well. Karl Mayer von Rothschild was born in 1788. So that was just a few years after the Brothers Grimm, since they were born in 1785 and 1786. So they're really not very far apart in age from Karl Mayer von Rothschild. This is the Rothschild archive, their family tree. You can get information right from this website on their lineage. And Karl Mayer von Rothschild is the son of Mayer Amschel Rothschild. He was that first Rothschild that began the banking dynasty. So Karl headed up that German division of the Rothschild banking dynasty. If you watched my research video where we talked about German ancestry and naming patterns, then you're going to understand a little bit more about where I'm going with showing this family tree right now. If you haven't seen that, I would highly recommend watching that. Karl Mayer had several children. He had Adolf Karl von Rothschild. Adolf was mentioned in that German naming pattern video that I just mentioned. We're not really going to talk about Adolf today, though. And then you have, let me find him. Here we go. Mayer Karl von Rothschild. Okay, this guy right here, Mayer Karl von Rothschild. He was the son of Karl Mayer, and he attended the college that the Brothers Grimm taught at, and, was a professor and a head librarian at. He attended that school when they were teaching there. Now, the name of that school is, and I'm going to butcher this, I'm sure, but Gottingen University. Gottingen, Gottingen, or Gottingen University. And he was there to study law, and then after he left there, he worked in the Frankfurt Bank. Now, like I said, that is this guy right here. Okay, whoop, sorry about that. That is, go back over. That is this guy right here. If I can highlight him. Mayer Karl von Rothschild. Then you have, let's go back to Karl Mayer, the Rothschild that was based in Frankfurt and is right around the same age as those Brothers Grimm. Karl Mayer was in Frankfurt, and that was about, I mapped it out on Google Maps, and where he was he lived very close, 20 minutes by car from where the Brothers Grimm grew up. Now, if you remember, the Rothschild family, Rothschild family, and I guess you could just say heirs, they sold that plot of land in Austria. It was so close to Germany, and but it was in Austria, I believe. So that huge wooded area that was just, I don't even know how many acres of property that was, but it was purchased by someone that was going to use it to, I think he was going to restore some of it, but anyway, it was a lot of money that it sold for, and if you read some of these tales, these collections of the Brothers Grimm, some of these stories talk a lot about wooded areas, and so there's a little bit of kind of like a theme and obsession almost with going into the woods, and Rumpelstiltskin, of course, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel was in the woods, in a tower. There were many stories like that, but there were a lot of stories of hunters and different types of hunting and things. So let's back up because there's a few other connections to be made here. There's an article that I found in the Rothschild archive, and that's rothschildarchive.org. And this article is named Mayor Karl von Rothschild. So let's go back to the guy that was the student at the university that the Brothers Grimm taught at. Mayor Karl von Rothschild, collector or patriot. So, it goes into a little bit of his background and his life. And, he was a collector of art, so it talks a lot about that if you want to get into learning more about that. But right around the time that he was at this Gottingen University, let's go back up to the Brothers Grimm and look for... We're actually going to click on Jacob here. And let's go down to his, when he worked at the university. Oh, it might actually be under politics. Yes, okay. So the brothers had some involvement in this protest, and there's this thing called the Gottingen Seven. It's a group of 7 liberal professors at Gottingen. Now, keep in mind, I don't know how they're defining liberal professors in Germany at this time period, so you might want to look that up because I don't know what that means to them, okay, back then. So, there were these 7 men. Let's look at their protest here. And they were criticizing the ruler of Germany at the time. So I'll just read some of this here. Okay, here he is right here. So this is Ernst Augustus. Let's see here. So they got in trouble when they were at the university for protesting, and I think they eventually had to, here's the aftermath, it's describing the aftermath, and eventually they had to leave the university. The direct effects of the protests were limited, public sensation and media interest was high in Germany and much of Europe, and the seven were popular among the general public. Each of the seven had his own personal reasons for defying the king, but the fact that they had done so was the central catalyst for the media and public attention. The efforts of the Gottingen Seven outlived each of them, and the creation of a liberal republic in Germany can in part be tracked back to their protests. So liberal republic in Germany. That's not really gonna, I guess that didn't bring us to anything, but that might be another avenue that any of you researchers out there can go down. I didn't have time to get into that. But, you know, it's interesting that at the time of them being at this college, university, they ended up, you know, getting into a little bit into politics and got in trouble for that. Now, I don't know what they were protesting. I don't know specifically what they were protesting. I didn't get a chance to look into that. But what I noticed was that the Brothers Grimm, when they were first putting together their works, they were actually, like I mentioned before, they were funded by someone specific. And if you think about, you know, who would want those disturbing so-called fairy tales published and out there for the public to be able to see and read, and eventually, you know, parents and grandparents reading them to their children and grandchildren. There were also some very disturbing, you know, I wouldn't even call it a fairy tale, but very strange stories. Now, and a lot of them had anti-Semitic themes. This is called The Jew Among Thorns. So when you read this, when you go to this link here and you look at this story, it actually mentions how a lot of the Brothers Grimm fairy tales had some anti-Semitic undertones. And Hitler actually ended up using some of these fairy tales in his propaganda. He actually even painted some of the stories because he had like an obsession, an infatuation with those stories. So here's an article that talks about Hitler's infatuation with Snow White. Okay, so in this article it talks about how he had watercolor paintings of, let's see here, watercolor paintings of some of the characters in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and also Pinocchio. All right. So I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to mention that. Let's go back here. Now, if you remember, in that research video where I talked about German naming patterns, we talked about Dorothea. Angela Dorothea Merkel. The Grimm brothers have several connections to different Dorotheas. I believe it was Wilhelm that was married to a Dorothea. So I just wanted to mention that. And of course, that son of Karl von Rothschild is Adolf Rothschild. Wanted to bring your attention to that again. So if that's something you're interested in, go back and watch that video so you can get more details. When I started researching Snow White, since, Adolf Hitler had this obsession with Snow White, I found that there were many different inspirations for that tale. Nobody really knows what exactly inspired that tale, because some of these fairy tales are, here, I'll get to that picture in a second here. Let's back out. Some of those fairy tales are really old, like a couple thousand years old. So, no one really knows exactly where they came from, but there is one website that I found that claims to have the, so-called magic mirror that inspired talking about the mirror in Snow White. So here's the mirror that they talk about. And the first thing that I noticed is that it kind of looks like an owl. I don't know if you guys see that at the top there. But that was the first thing that I noticed. Okay. Here's the castle that you can go and visit. This is supposedly the house, or, not castle, but house that, where the young lady lived that inspired that tale. Here's the mirror that her stepmother had. Let's go back to the website for that house that you can visit. I don't know if you guys noticed the logo that pops up when you first see it. I guess you could say it kind of looks like a dwarf, but the first thing that I thought of was wizards and warlocks. It looks a lot like those patches, military patches. All right, let's move on. Okay, so we're going to go back to talking about the Rothschild connection. The son of let's see here, Karl von Rothschild. I'm sorry, Mayor Karl von Rothschild. Have to keep everybody straight here. So we have, give me one moment just to pull this up. Okay, I'm actually gonna back up just a little bit here because I'm trying to find, okay, Solomon Mayer von Rothschild. Okay, he was born in 1774. So let's go over to Solomon. Let's find Solomon Mayer, here we go. 1774 to 1855. Okay, so he has a son named Anselm. Anselm has, hang on, bear with me, please. I hate for there to be dead air, but I just want to make sure I get everything right. Okay, Anselm has Albert. Let's find Albert. Okay, here we go, right here. And then Albert has several children. The connection that I want to make here with Albert is, okay, let's take a look at Solomon Albert Anselm von Rothschild. He was born in Vienna, and his brothers Nathaniel and Ferdinand inherited most of their parents' real estate and art collection. This is the guy that inherited the bulk of the wealth and that role of, heading up that branch of the bank. He is the one that bought, here, I'm actually going to show you guys a picture of him. He is the one that bought that plot of land that I was talking about. That was just recently sold back in 2019. I believe it was January or February 2019. So, Austria, Hungary, that piece of property in Austria that was wooded. All right. So that's when that large piece of property was purchased, and that's who purchased it. Something really crazy that I found out about his children, because I was trying to kind of follow his lineage and see who inherited that and everything. But listen to this, guys. It gets crazy. All right, let's go to his Wikipedia. So he had several children, and 7 children. His firstborn was born 1877 and died in 1934. He never married and died in a private mental hospital. The youngest, Oscar von Rothschild, 1888 to 1909, never married and at age 21 committed suicide. Now, there are a lot of great videos out there that talk about oddities in the Rothschild family, but I've never heard anything about this. He had a 6-year-old daughter that died at 6 years old. And his wife died very young, 36 years old. So, when you take a look at his son, let's see here. His son, Baron Eugene Daniel de Rothschild. All right, let me just get him pulled up so I can talk about him. Okay, so Eugene Daniel von Rothschild. He served his son, Eugene Daniel, right here, served in World War I, and he married a woman named Catherine Kitty Wolfe in 1925. And after that, they lived together in Paris. Kitty, who was an American, was also a friend of Wallace Simpson. I don't know if you guys know who Wallace Simpson is, but I'll tell you. All right, let's grab, this is, okay, Kitty Wolfe is right here. So that's Kitty, okay? Her friend, Wallace Simpson, was the wife of Edward, Prince Edward, Prince Edward, Duke of Windsor. He was the guy that abdicated his throne and gave it to his brother, who was the father of the now Queen Elizabeth. And when Prince Edward abdicated his throne, he gave it up because they wouldn't allow him to marry Wallace Simpson if he was king. So he gave it up and married her. And the reason why he couldn't marry her was because she was a divorced woman. They had Nazi sympathies. So they were friends with the Nazis. They met with Adolf Hitler several times. When you guys watched that documentary that I did on the Mitford sisters, we talked a lot about Unity Mitford and Diana Mitford. Diana Mitford was very close to Wallace Simpson, and of course very close to Adolf Hitler and to a lot of his upper echelon and supporters, because her husband, Sir Oswald Mosley, was going to be the British arm of that party, the Nationalist Party. So, but that of course did not work out. So the fact that this Eugene Daniel von Rothschild had all those siblings that died mysteriously and had a brother that ended up in, a mental institution. I'm not saying that there can't be coincidences, but I just feel like it's just, one too many. And there are many Rothschilds that are not even mentioned that have committed suicide, and it makes you wonder what type of trauma they went through. When we talk about generational trauma in order to control information in a family, or to control the direction that a family is going in order to kind of insulate the family's secrets, and not just secrets, but their belief systems and the inner workings of that family. You have this trauma that occurs, and the people that cannot hack it and they can't make it, they crack under the pressure. And when someone is traumatized for the purposes of mind control, like MK Ultra mind control, which is something that the CIA has used, you can look it up yourself. When you're looking at something like that, when you have intergenerational trauma-based mind control, a lot of times it works because it's generational, but sometimes it's not going to work. So that's where you end up with people that commit suicide, or people that end up in mental institutions. They just can't handle it. So it's very strange that a Rothschild would be friends with, that would marry someone that is friends with Nazi sympathizers. And then he ended up marrying this woman, Jean Stewart, who was an actress. And they moved to Monaco. And there was some other strangeness that went along with that. But anyway, so, and that was an American actress, by the way. Or I'm sorry, an English actress. So let's go back here for a moment. Go back up. So this is the guy that owns all that land. There are rumors that the land that was sold back in 2019 by the Rothschild heirs was used for nefarious purposes. And one of those rumors, and this is just, alleged use of the land, but one of those things that is talked about is hunting. And there was hunting human beings, more specifically. And there was this whistleblower that just came out, and you can check out that interview. I think it's on Stillness in the Storm, but I can't remember. And they talk about, knowing for a fact that there was some things like that going on. But, there's definitely an obsession with some of these tales that the Brothers Grimm collected. There's an obsession by elites and by the Cabal with things like, Little Red Riding Hood, Sleeping Beauty, Rumpelstiltskin, Cinderella, and Snow White for sure. And I just think that there's a connection between who funded them and asked them to collect that and put it into these two volumes in 1812. I'm sorry, 1812 and 1815. I think there's a connection between who funded it and who asked them to collect them. And I think there's a connection between that and then this kind of romanticizing these stories that are very strange. I mean, if you think about some of the lullabies that we sing to our children, like Rockabye Baby, On the Treetop, when you think about the words in those songs and those lullabies, there's just a lot of high strangeness going on there. And I think that, and you'll have to look this up, but I think that the Pied Piper is also one of those stories that kind of, it's it talks about abducting children, calling them away from their families. And so anyway, that's where I'm going to wrap it up. I mean, I'm really sorry that I kind of rambled on with some of the things that I'm talking about, but there was just so much really interesting information that I wanted to get out there. And you guys can research this yourself. I'm going to link a lot of these articles that I talked about in the description below, so you guys can follow up on it yourself. But take a look at, use Google Maps. I like to use Google Maps to kind of map things out and see how close people were together. And so when you look at that branch of the German Rothschilds being in Frankfurt and how close they were to where the Brothers Grimm were, that's very interesting. That's a really interesting thing to look at. And of course, this very strange, I'm not even going to call it a coincidence, but this very strange coincidence that these two men that were not wealthy, they were not wealthy growing up, and did not have very much money. And it says right here that they were an impoverished family with several children in the family. It's very strange how they were able to, get educated and be able to pull together all of these very odd stories. And they were just so close to where the Rothschild family lived as well. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. I am putting this up on my YouTube channel. It will also be on, of course, Patreon. Patreon, actually, anybody that's a patron on my Patreon account, they get to see this content first. So I release it to them a few days early, and then it goes up to the public. But you can also find me on BitChute. And I'm trying to keep BitChute as my backup channel. And then, of course, I'm on Twitter as well. So thank you so much for supporting me, and I'll talk to you next time.